The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Morning, everybody. I'm not sure. I think most of you are muted, but hopefully you can hear me. Does anybody want to send me a quick message just to let me know that that you're there, that you can hear me? This is Amanda, by the way. Okay. Well, I see that we've got 17 people on the line. I think that we had about 22 or 23 that could make it today with their scheduling. So I'm going to give it just a couple of more minutes to kind of let a couple more people join, and then we're going to get started. So thanks, everybody, for your patience. Hopefully we can make this as quick and painless as possible. But in front of you, you can see the agenda for today, or at least part of the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the different sections of Paychex and some of the features that you may or may not know about. And then we're going to talk about the handbook after that. But we'll get into that in due time. So just a couple more minutes, and then we're going to get going. Okay, everybody, it's almost 10 after, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. So today we're going to talk about the time and labor module of Paychex, which is where everybody does their timesheet. And right now, what I'm seeing is that a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with where they can go to actually do their own timesheet approvals, maybe make modifications to their timesheet, even modifying things like vacation requests, that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about these different sections, and just so you know where you can go to do any sort of request, you know, even things like bereavement leave, balances to see what your accruals are for your different types of vacation or sick or time off, how you can search to look for an old request or a request that may or may not have been approved. And actually how to back out a request in the event that you made a mistake or something comes up or changes. Again, we'll go through timesheet entry, which everyone's pretty familiar with, but then I want to look at reviewing your timesheet, showing you where you can make edits or changes, and doing your own approvals, because that's something that we do want to get everybody in the habit of doing, is approving their own timesheet before the supervisor approves it. Then we're going to get into this human resources module. And I think that some of you have this and some of you may not, just based on, you know, whenever it was that you started and what was sort of introduced to you at that time. So essentially, the human resources module is actually there to help you kind of access some information that you may need. It's going to allow you to make some changes to maybe your deductions, things like that, whatever. Most of the things about your sort of your employee profile can be modified through the human resources module. So we'll talk about that. You can access your W-2s, things like that, right in that section. And then also we've got some company documents up there, like the handbook and like some information on the 403B plan and some forms and things. So we're going to go through that section and sort of look at what areas and options are available, what sort of resources you can hopefully access, and if there's other things that you'd like to see up there that perhaps you find would be a helpful tool for you. So we're going to go through all of that right now. And then in the second part of this, we're going to get through the handbook. So if you bear with me just 1 second, I'm going to pull up and use my Paychex login as the sort of test case that we're going to look at today. So obviously you're here on the landing page, mypaychex.com. You're going to do what you do every week. You're going to log in. And then this is going to bring you to your home page. And hopefully your home page looks pretty much the same as this one, except none of you should have access to the payroll tab. That's something that I have because I process payroll. But you will have your human resources tab and your time and labor tab. Now, if you don't have the human resources tab, that's okay. We'll get that for you after we get off this webinar. I can send out directions to anybody that doesn't have it. It's a quick and simple thing to add. But for now, just you know, if you don't have it, just try to listen along as we go through it, so you can kind of learn a little bit about it before you access it. But we're going to start with time and labor, which is what you all have and where you enter your timesheet. So I'm going to click on the time and labor tab, put in my PIN. I don't know if all of you have to do this too, or if it's something that's related to me because I'm an administrator. And I'm going to go right to. So this is my home page in time and labor, and most of yours will look exactly the same. Clearly, I have a lot of message here that I haven't deleted. So you're going to see you have your timesheet and your timesheet express. And we're going to scroll down and kind of come back to the timesheet section. And I want to just look at the different balances and your section here about your time off benefits. And so, and also, before we get into that, you see here you've got this tab that says hours worked right here. And that's going to actually be, you're going to use this section later. So be aware that this is here. Because when you want to set the pay period, this is where you're going to actually come in here and do some edits and changes, and where you're going to actually do your approvals. So, you know, just be aware that this is here. We're going to come back to it, but this is going to be an important area because this is where you actually come in and do your timesheet approvals. But let's move away from that and come down here and look at your benefits. So here, any benefits that you have are going to be listed. You're going to see sick time that you have in accrual, anything that is currently in your bank, anything that's already approved, and then whatever is available. The same thing with your vacation time, and if you have personal time, that's going to show up here too. If you want to put in a time off request, you're going to do that right here. So you're going to use this pull-down menu, choose the type of time off that you're looking for, and add it. And I'm just going to do a test case so you'll see. So let's say I want to take some sick time. So I'm going to say that I'm going to be sick on Friday for, let's see, half the day, let's say. So I'm going to be out from 1 o'clock on. So I'm going to put in start time of 1 o'clock p.m. I'm going to be out for 4 hours. And let's say I have a doctor's appointment. And you don't have to include a note, but if you want to. And then I click apply. So now I've made this request for 4 hours of sick time. And as soon as you do that over here, it's going to show up over here in this request status area. So it's going to show you the date, the type of time you requested, the time that you said you were going to be out, and then how long. And if I wanted to go and look for any old requests, anything like that, I would do that right here. I would pull down the type of request that it was. Is it something that's still hanging out there? Is it something where it was denied or that I canceled? And then you can quickly and easily just, what time was it, floating holiday, sick, personal, vacation, that sort of thing. You think you took a day off in September, you don't remember. So you can really modify the search filters to be whatever it is that you're looking for. But this is a good way to see if you're not sure about your balance. Maybe we've had a couple of times where people weren't sure, they didn't remember, that they had taken some time off and they thought their balances were off, this is a good way to come in here and check that and just say, you know, oh, I forgot, I took a day off this day, or you know, I had put it in my timesheet that I took this day off, and then I didn't end up doing that. I worked that day, and I forgot to mention it. So this is a good place to kind of go and sort of start with if you feel like you want to just take a look at old time requests that you've made. So again, coming back here to this request that I just input for sick time for 4 hours, you can see here that there's this little hourglass, and the status is pending. Gives you this little key down here to show you. So, you know, that hasn't been approved yet. It's pending. If it was approved, I would have a green check mark. If denied, I would have this red X. You know, as you can see here, these different types of things. What comes up a lot is that people do. They put in a request for time, and then something changes, and they have to modify it. If you are in a situation where you've taken time off and it hasn't been approved yet, and you can see it still sitting here with a pending status, you can actually click this X right here, which I'm going to do now, and it completely eliminates it from the system. So if you have a request that's pending that hasn't been approved, and you know you're not going to take it anymore, just click that X, and then it goes out of the system, and it's like it never happened. It's a little bit trickier if you have put in a request and it's already been approved, but we can get around that too. That's a situation where you would notify me if you find that you have that kind of a situation, only because there's really no good place to like request that your time be canceled through the system. It's something that you have to do by letting me know, and then I'll talk to your supervisor, and we'll either we can go into the sort of the administrative back end of the system and get that time out of your timesheet. So if you do run into that issue, let me know, but otherwise you can do your cancellations right there in the event that something changes in your plan. Again, everybody is muted, but I am going to open this up for questions. So I think before we move off of this, does anybody have any questions? And let me see. I'm not sure. Just send me a message over the chat if you have questions about this, and then that way we can kind of keep moving through it, and I will answer your questions as I get to them. So just send me a message as we go along, because I actually think that I don't think I can unmute all of you all at the same time, but then we'll go from there. So that is the time off request section. And now we're going to go and look at the timesheet section. So as most of you do, you're going to come in and click on Timesheet Express here at the top of that page. And this is going to give you your timesheet. You've all seen this before, I'm pretty sure. And it does look a little bit different if you are an exempt employee. So if you're an exempt employee, you're not going to have this start and end lunch type of situation, but for the most part, everybody's timesheet is going to look like this if you're reporting your hours hourly. I think there's only a handful of people that actually are in the exempt situation here, so if you do have any questions about your timesheet, please let me know, but I think most of you have a pretty good handle on that. But anyway, going back to the hourly timesheet that you see here in front of you, if it depends on how many times a day do you clock in, clock out. Some people, you might work an hour in the morning and a couple of hours here and there. It depends, are you part-time, are you full-time, what does your day look like? So you may or may not, this is a trick that sort of I learned because I do clock in and clock out pretty regularly throughout the day depending on what's going on. A lot of times I need to have more than one line here, and it's much easier for me if I just put, if I start out with multiple selection lines here where I can just say, okay, clocked in at 9, out at 10, back in at 10:30, and work till 12, and I don't have to keep hitting apply in between. And I'm going to do some tests here so you can see. So let's say I'm going to put in time for Monday the 17th, and let's say I clocked in, at default time is 9. Let's say I clocked in at 10 a.m. And let's say I started lunch at 12, ended lunch at 12:30, and I stopped working at, let's say, 1:30. And make sure you keep your AMs and PMs in here. I'm sure you've all experienced the result of what can happen if you put your AM or PM in wrong, because it will look like you worked 12 hours or something to that effect. And typically, then you can just hit, apply. So you just come up here, you put in apply, and that's going to look, it's going to set this up for you. So here you see now I've got a 10 a.m. clock in. 10 to 12 I worked. I took a lunch from 12 p.m. to 12:30, so I've got a half-hour lunch over here. 12:30 to 1:30, I worked another hour. Now, let's say that there were 2 more times in this day that I clocked in and clocked out. So I'm going to come up here just to make this easier on myself. You certainly can do your entry, put it right there on this line, hit apply. It's going to give you another line. You put in the next entry. But because I know that I worked, 2 more shifts this day, in essence, I'm going to just change this up here where it says shifts per day to 2, and then I can click Reset Form. And now it's going to give me 2 sets of boxes. So that way, I don't have to keep putting in one entry, clicking Apply, putting in one entry, clicking Apply. It's all here, and I can just simply say, okay, I know that, I started working again at 2 o'clock p.m. and was done at 3, and then I worked again from 3:30 to 5, let's say. And again, depending on your situation, how many hours a week you work, you may not have to enter this level of detail, but for some of the part-time people who are clocking in and clocking out regularly, this is a helpful tool and something to know it's there. So now that I'm done with Monday, I'm going to click Apply, and there it is. So now I've got all this here. And then because I have this set at 2 shifts per day, and you can set that at any number. So if you want 5 shifts in a day, you can put that in there, and it's going to set your sheet every single day showing that number of shifts. So now I'm all set. I've got Monday in there. I feel good about it. I see here I'm double checking myself. I don't look like, nothing here looks funny to me where like maybe I did mess up my AMs or PMs, something like that. I don't have, any double clock-ins or a missing, end of my lunch, anything like that. So I'm pretty happy with this day. So based on that, and I'm doing this just as an example. So in normal situation, of course, I go in and fill all the rest of my days, click Apply, and my timesheet would be, in essence, fully entered. But we're not done yet. So the next step in this process is to make sure that we feel good about what's in the timesheet. You want to just do a quick double check. So you're going to come up here, and you're going to go to Timesheet. And and you're going to set your date range. So, if I wanted to, if I was already entering time for the current pay period, I would come up here and set this date range, whatever it is that it needs to be, to make sure I'm entering time for the right period. Once you do that, it's going to show you everything that you've entered right here. And this is where you have the ability to make changes or delete something you've entered. So Timesheet Express is where you do your actual entry. The regular timesheet area is where you can make your modifications. I regularly have questions about that because people don't know how to change their timesheet once they've done something and they discover they've got an error or something didn't report correctly. So this is where you come in and do that under the straight old timesheet section. So let's say that right now I'm feeling good about it, but then I just remembered I actually only worked, let's say, in this last shift. It wasn't 5 o'clock. It was only 4:45. So I'm going to come over here to this little hourglass here, and I've clicked that. And what that does is it's going to create this window. It pops it up, and it's going to let me make a change. So if I remember, okay, now you know what, it's 4:45. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to change my end time to 4:45, and I'm going to click Apply. Give it a minute, and then you see that changes what you've got in your timesheet. So you've been able to make that edit without any issue. And then, let's say I kind of remembered that I didn't take a lunch that day, let's say, or I've got to change something. So, and I'm showing you the lunch because this is going to create a little bit of a funky problem. So if I say, oh, you know what, I forgot, I didn't even eat lunch that day. I just clocked in and clocked out. I want to get that lunch out of there. I'm going to click the X button, or that red X, and that's going to give me this notice that said, are you sure you want to delete this shift? So it's a little bit, foolproof, so that it's going to give you that, oh, it didn't create the problem. Well, so basically now what I've done is removed my lunch. So this is where you can go to do any of that sort of modification to your timesheet. Please call me or let me know if you're struggling or have any problems with any of these areas, because I have encountered a few situations where Paychex does create a little bit of a funky error with some of these situations, especially around deleting lunches or not having a start or end time to your lunch. So if you do run into trouble, let me know. But for the most part, it's pretty cut and dry. This is the section where you would do any of those edits. So if you want to change your hours or delete your hours, this is where you can come in to do that. And if you remember, oh, I got to put it another shift, you just go back to the Timesheet Express and enter it in the same way that you have always done all of your other entries. So now, here's your timesheet as it stands. You feel good about it. You've double-checked it. You've made your adjustments. Everything looks pretty good. So the next part, and this is the critical part, because you are going to all have to start doing your own timesheet approvals, and we'd like to kind of get that going for the next pay period. So that's why we want to make sure everybody's following along on this webinar. So now I've clicked back over here just onto my name tab. So you were in the timesheet section. Now you're just going to come up here and click back on your name, and it's going to bring you to that home page where you have these benefits and whatnot. So now, like we talked about before, this little section called Hours Worked is where it's going to show you what you've put in for the time period that you're entering for. Make sure that you're applying it to or you're putting in the right date range. So now you see that I have my time here that I've just entered, that you've all seen me enter. And if I click that little this little hourglass here, on the other page it allows me to edit things. Here it just shows me exactly what I've entered. You can't edit in this section. So this section is strictly for approvals. So I'm going to look it over one more time. I feel good about it. I know that these are the correct hours. I've got it all under control now, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click these boxes, or you can click them one at a time as you go through each line, or you can click this little box here, and that's going to check them all for you. So there. So if I click that, it's going to automatically check everything in my timesheet, and I'm going to click this button that says Save All with the little disc, and that's going to give me everything that I need to do. I'm done now. So my timesheet's in, it's submitted, and my supervisor knows I've reviewed it, and it's approved by me. And now it goes to the supervisor, and they're going to look at it and make sure that everything looks good to them, and then they're going to go through their approval process. But this is where regularly when I run the payroll, there's quite a handful of people who are not doing their individual timesheet approvals. So this is where you do that. If you have any questions, please let me know. I am going to unmute the phones in a little while. I'm going to have Julie help me with that. So once we get there, just please keep an eye. Again, you can send me questions over chat, or just write them down. And when we open the phone lines up for questions, we will get to that. So this is, in a big nutshell, what you do in order to enter and approve your timesheet. So please, going forward, let's make sure that everybody's doing their timesheet approvals. And I know that the supervisors are going to start looking for that as well before they do the, some of you are already doing it. Some of your supervisors are already making sure that that's done. In other cases, we're going to start making sure that the supervisors are letting you know if you haven't done your approvals, they're not going to be able to approve your timesheets until you've approved your timesheets. So keep an eye on that. And again, don't ever hesitate to call me, contact me, email me, whatever works for you. Let me know if you're having trouble, you can't find something. And I know a lot of these sections, from page to page do tend to sometimes look a little bit similar. So don't hesitate to call or ask them, because they definitely, I'm happy to help you. to get through any of these types of things. So that's the timesheet approval process, and that's the time and labor module in essence. Those are, and this is going to, this message section, it seems like this system just constantly sends emails every time you do an entry in your own timesheet. So you can use this message section, you know, as you see fit, but ultimately I don't find it to be overly helpful. And even when the system creates the date range for you to enter your timesheet into later, it sends you an email. So most of the time this section is something I kind of skip over, but if you feel that it's something that's important and you want to take a look at any of these emails to see, let's say you made an error in your timesheet and you had to call and we had to fix it on the back end for something, you'll get an email about that. So it does also give you some documentation if there's been a modification, but a lot of times it's, you know, it's kind of buried in all these other just standard emails letting you know that something that you have created a timesheet. So that is the time and labor module. And let me come over here to the human resources module, and I think we'll just go through this next. And then at the end of this Paychex section, we'll open it up for questions and give everybody a few minutes to take a break, and then we'll start on the handbook. Okay, so this is the human resources section, and you see here that there's several different tabs on this side, and these are going to all, you can click on any of these, and it's going to give you another menu. So let's just get started. This is a compensation section. So if you wanted to see what did my last pay stub look like, I forgot it or I lost it. You know, those things, we lose those all the time. So if you want to see, well, let me take a look at what I got paid. You can go through here, and this is going to show you for every year that you've worked and that we've had Paychex. Now, if you worked here before we moved into Paychex, this is only going to show you the history that's run through Paychex. However, we transitioned to Paychex in 2013, so there's a good bulk of information here by this point. So this is going to show you every paycheck that you've received for the time that we have been using Paychex as a system. So I can look at any one of these checks, and I'm not going to click on them only because this is my personal account, but if you, and there's, you know, a lot of data on the check stub, but if you wanted to see any one of these paychecks, you just click on it, and it's going to pop up a window, and it's going to be your pay stub. So you can print that pay stub if you need it to validate something. If you're, you know, if you're moving, you need it for some place that you're going to be renting, benefits, anything like that. This is where you can come and access any number of your last pay stubs. And they're going to be available to you the whole time we use Paychex. So it's here, and the information isn't going anywhere. So this is a great resource so that, you know, you have it for your records in the event that you need it. And that's really what the human resources section is really all about. It's about your personal information and modifying that if you need to for the agency so that, you know, your direct deposits are going where you want them to be. You know, you can access your old tax forms, things like that. So this is really about, if you need something for you personally, this is a good place to start. So attendance and time off, again, this is going to show you your time off summary, and that's really the value in this particular tab. It's going to show you this is how much sick time you have, this is the balance, and this is the last time that you accrued any sort of amount. Total compensation summary. Again, I'm not going to click on this, but this is going to break down, you know, everything that you get working here. So it's going to be amounts received for, you know, your 403B, anything like that that's going on, benefit-wise, and your pay. Tax status. This is where you can come in and make a change to any sort of tax situation. So if you say, I've had a change in my life, or I've got too many allowances, I've got not enough allowances, I need to have additional withholding, whatever situation you may be in, you can come in here and make your changes. So if I said, oh, you know what, I want to make this a change to married, then I would go ahead and do that. Or let's say I want to, I have a child now, I'm going to put in that I need one allowance, something like that. Or, I need to start withholding an extra $50 because I owe taxes, something like that. You can make all those changes right here. And actually, I can't see it because there's the webinar thing is in the way. Here it is. There's a submit button here. And you just click submit. And what that does, it doesn't automatically make your changes. It's going to send me a message that says somebody's made an update. Go in and look at it. And then if I make that up, if I take a look at it, I see that everything looks good. There's no errors or issues. We're going to approve that. And then you will have had your tax status updated. Now, we do also ask for physical backup to put in your file of these types of things. So I will probably also contact you and say, can you just fill out this form and get it back to me? But ultimately, this is a good way to do it so that if you know that it's Monday and payroll is going to run on Wednesday and you're worried about making sure you get this updated in time. This is a good way to make sure that it's going to run through payroll correctly. If you're not sure that you can get in touch with me, or you're going to for whatever the situation may be, this is a good way to do this, because obviously I would check any requests before I ran payroll. So that's what this section is about. I'm just going to click cancel because I don't want to actually make too many changes. Now, if I wanted to come in here and look at my tax forms, it's going to show me name, address, part of my social, my birth date, just my employee ID, the date I was hired. And then you see here, I can click on, it's going to give me a list of all the tax and wage statements that I've had up to this point. So these are my W-2s right here. So if you needed those for anything that was going on in your life personally, you needed to validate something, your income, this is a great place to come where you can just come in here and grab them, and you don't need to worry about making a request for anything or delay. Then we're going to look at this calculators tab. This is something, again, that's a tool for you if you want to kind of look at your particular situation. If you're looking at your gross pay, your filing status, you're going to enter all this information. It's going to help you calculate what your paycheck's going to look like. So if you know that you are going to, I don't know, if you feel like you need to change the number of allowances that you have, or you feel like there's going to be an increase or something like that, and you need to know what your take-home pay is going to look like. You can come in here and use this calculator, and it's going to help you, just see what your final number would look like, so you can make the best decisions about what you want to do with whether it be your allowances or deductions, or you want to start making a contribution to the 403B, something like that. This is the place, or if you say, okay, what's it going to do to my paycheck if I need to cover a dependent, something like that. You can actually customize your deduction and put the information in here, and it's going to calculate it. So none of this is actually going to change anything that's in the system. It's just going to give you a tool to say, okay, now I know what I need to do, or now I know, that I'm going to be making more or making less by making these changes, and that's good, that's bad, whatever it is. So this is a nice, helpful tool. It's actually pretty new to Paychex. They only just introduced this a short time ago. So that's the compensation section. And again, I say this lightly, but you can't really hurt this too much. So play around with it. Don't feel like clicking on something is going to suddenly create a whole bunch of changes or problems. Because for the most part, we can, even if something does happen, we can undo it. So don't be afraid to look around in here. Okay, company information. This is the message center. If there's a message that we need to get out to everybody, we can post it here. That's usually not something that we do. Usually we would just, because of the size of our agency, we can usually get a hold of everybody pretty easily through email or through different means. But this would be another place where if we had, a not so time-sensitive message for the staff, we could display it here. And if we did, we would let you know that there was something for you to look at. Handbooks and acknowledgments. This is, I just actually went in and double checked all of this yesterday, but this is where you can actually look at the employee handbook. So I know everyone got a copy emailed to them, but if you just needed it for quick reference or you didn't have the email anymore, here it is. This is where you can come in and click on that link, and it's going to show you our entire employee handbook. You can look up any policies or other information that you need. So this is a nice tool just to make sure that you're able to quickly access something if you have a question. Again, you can always ask me, but it's here for you if you need it. Company directory. This is another helpful tool. So if you need to get a hold of somebody, this is the email address. But in certain cases, individuals that probably have cell phones, this is where you can come in and look for phone numbers, things like that. And some people, are missing their cell phone numbers, and that's something that we're going to work on getting updated. But can be a helpful tool if you're not sure how to get a hold of somebody. Granted, again, if you need to get a hold of someone, always contact the office, and we can get that information for you. Obviously, other employees. Company documents and links. This is again, I came in and just made sure yesterday that we had everything the right forms up to date, and we did. The 403B election form is here. So if you decide that you want to start making deductions, if you want to start if you want to change the deductions that you currently have, or if you are making deductions and you say, I got to cancel this, what have you, anything along those lines, you can come in here and view this form. I'm just going to click the view so you can see what happens. It just pops up the form, and this is what you would fill out and return. So this is, again, it's a tool. It's another resource for you in the event that you do need to make a change. Instead of having to go through the process of requesting a form, you have it right at your fingertips. Now, not everyone is able to make this webinar today, but we are going to actually ask everybody to fill another one of these out, because we are missing some from people that they didn't want to participate, but they also didn't fill out the form stating that they were not going to participate. So I am going to email this out to everybody and ask everybody to please fill this out. Even if you're making deductions currently, just fill it out as in whatever the same situation is that you currently are doing. So if you're having $25 withheld, just put that down again. But we're going to, and it's a new form, so we do need to kind of get all of our old documents updated. So here nor there, I will send this out in an email, but if for any reason you need to access it at another time, it is right here for you. Same thing with the summary plan description, again, for the 403B plan. We're going to touch on the 403B a little bit later, but this is, again, where you can view this. And this is a helpful document, and I encourage everybody to please take a look at this. It's not that long, and it's essentially a list of it's frequently asked questions, essentially, and it basically says, who can be a participant? When am I eligible for the company contribution? What are the eligibility requirements? How do I contribute? Can I take a loan? What's a catch-up contribution? So this essentially is going to help you kind of understand what this plan can do. How you're able to best maximize your I guess your connection to this plan. You're able to to what you can and can't do, essentially. So please take a look at this. It is something that I think it's a pretty easy document to get through. It's plain English. A lot of these other documents, around these types of plans are you need a law degree to read them because they're so complex and they don't make a lot of sense, but this is pretty simple. Again, always ask me any questions that you have, but I know that we've had a couple of situations where people weren't really sure what they could do. I even just had another call from an old employee the other day about taking a loan or a hardship distribution. So take a look at this because, and again, we're going to get into it later, but this is a very helpful document, and that's why I want to make sure that it's up here for everybody to take a look at whenever they're free. And this was emailed, but again, emails get lost. So That's here, and this is again. Please take make a note if there's any sort of paperwork or documentation that you feel like you would like to see up here. That's something we can always add. So definitely let me know if there's any sort of a resource that you feel like it would just be great to have quick and easy access to like this, because we can put anything we want to on here for the most part. We're going to move right along into this blank forms. Some of these are like if you wanted to change your direct deposit, this is the form that you would need. And while you actually can make that change in the HR module here, we haven't gotten into it yet, this would be where we would require a paper documentation as backup. So this is where you can get that form. And these are all just blank forms that Paychex has put together. These aren't actual company forms. So, your withholding allowances, your W-4, which is, the federal withholding form. You can look up your state withholding form here. Obviously, it would be New York. Your I-9 forms, things like that. So these are some resources that you may or may not need, but in the event that you need them, they are here. The only thing I would caution is this is not our employee expense report. And I'm going to try to I can't seem to find a way to get rid of this, but I think I'm going to have to contact Paychex and see if they can get this out of here. But don't use this form. You don't really need to do anything with this payroll deduction authorization either, or the request for time off. So ultimately, you're going to look at anything above here. These are forms that I'm going to have removed from the system, but for some reason, it's not giving me the choice to do that. But again, these are just for your reference. If you need them for anything, they're here. A lot of times when people change their allowances, they obviously need to fill out these new forms, and I usually send them to people. So this is a good way to just have it at your fingertips if you need something. And then moving along, job postings. This is an area where we would put, if we had any open postings, we would possibly list them here. We haven't done that in the past. It's something that we, may consider doing going forward, only because we, typically use other sources to post our positions. But if we had postings, this is a place that we could probably, that we would post them and notify you. So this is where this personal information tab is where you would make any modifications that you wanted to your sort of personal situation. So if I wanted to change my home information, let's see, this is going to be my address, my personal email, my cell phone, things like that. Again, you're going to make modifications. You're going to come over here and hit the submit button. And that would, send me a message again that said this person has made an address change update. And if you would put in a request, you could click this link here and look at whatever request you've made going, backwards or forwards. My work information, again, if for any reason, there's pretty much no reason that you would need to change any of this. Usually that's something I would have taken care of if something did change, like maybe you had a different cell phone number or something like that. But it's here in case, in case anything does come up. This is where you could change your emergency contact information, and again, it's my personal information, but if you wanted to add dependents, you can do that right here. You don't really have to for any particular reason. We don't use, we use a different system for the benefits, but if for any reason you did want to add them here, you could. And if you wanted to update your direct deposit, like I said before, you could come in here and you can either add another one, you could look at what your current ones were, you could change it, you could remove it, whatever you would need to do. And then once you had done it, you can click confirm changes. So you don't need to do anything with the EEO self-survey. We're not of the size that we need to report this information. So you can, if you choose to fill this out, it's entirely up to you. There's really no reason that you need to at this point. But it's here as sort of a standard function in Paychex. So you can pretty much ignore this section unless for some reason you really feel compelled to fill this out. But again, we don't report the information. There's nothing we do with it. employee documents and links. If there was a specific document that we needed specifically, for you for some reason, or anything that we wanted to show you here, we could again put documents here. Right now there's nothing here. So if for any reason there was something we needed, it could go here, and again, we would notify you before we expected you to look at anything. Again, company credit card, company equipment, building access, these are things we track excuse me, in other systems, so that's not listed here, mostly because Paychex there's not a lot of fields that we can actually detail everything out in, so we don't list that here. So that's the personal information section. The training, education, and skills. There's not much here. Again, you do take trainings, but we haven't tracked them through Paychex. We have them tracked elsewhere. So it is something that we may or may not in the future want to start tracking here, just so you know what's been taken, or so you have a listing of the trainings you've completed. But as of right now, we haven't duplicately tracked them. But if we did, we would again let you know. A lot of these things are just blank, so I'm not really going to go into too much detail on this section. Most of these things, there's not a lot here. Training curriculum, enrolling for training, education, and skills. This isn't a section that we've done a lot with here in this system, because we do keep files elsewhere. So just so you're aware, though, if we do use it, we'll inform you going forward. Same thing, we use a completely different software and system for performance review, so there's not anything really listed in this section. And then if you actually, find that you want to change something, if you feel like, you want to get more or less emails from Paychex, you want to be notified, through your home email, things like that, you can come in here and make changes to your email preferences. So if there's an information, like if there's a request that goes in, it's going to go to my work email, I can put it to my home email. If there's a direct deposit request, a change to my home information, a change to my tax status, I'm going to get an email about all that. Anything else, if my I-9 expires, I'm going to get an email about that. So you can change your email preferences here, decide which email addresses you want things to go to. If I wanted to change my password, I would click this link and do that. I don't want to do that, but this is where you could do that. And this is, this is just a setting thing. If you want to sort of modify the way that this looks on this side, you pretty much have the one choice to say, I want to keep these menus expanded, or I want them collapsed. It's kind of unnecessary. So, but if you want to make that change, that's up to you. So this is the overall the human resources module. So that's this area of the system. Again, if for any reason you don't have access to this, please contact me. It's a very simple adjustment to get you set up with this. And the point of this is to help you and to be a tool for you. So we always want absolutely any feedback you can give me on, is there a better way for this to be a more useful tool for you? If there is, fantastic. Definitely, please let me know. And I think at this point, I don't know. I gotta see. I think Julie is still with me. Julie, are you here? She was gonna be in the other room answering phones, but she's got to unmute the lines. So I'm going to do that in just 1 second, but if you want, just take a quick breather. I'm going to unmute the lines, and then if anybody has any questions, we'll get into questions, and then we'll take a quick break and start on the handbook. So I will be right back with you. Everybody sit tight.
What's going on here?
Hi, everybody. I'm back. I apologize. We apparently can't unmute the phones because there's a hard-coded setting in the system that we can't undo in the middle of a webinar. So please send me your questions over chat, and we will go through them as a group. If you don't want to do that, either you can email it to me if it's a private question, or send me or call me after the webinar, whatever is convenient for you. Again, I really am sorry. I thought that this was something we were able to do, but we'll get through it. So if you want, just take another minute or two to take a break, and then we're going to jump into the webinar, and we'll try to get you out of here as soon as possible. Thanks, everybody, for your time and your patience, and yeah, we'll be back with you in just another minute or so. Thanks a lot. Okay, everybody, I think we're going to get going again here. So at this point, hopefully in front of you, you can see my big orange fall slide that says Employee Handbook Key Policies and Updates. This is kind of going to be a synopsis of some of the more important policies. I'm going to try to keep it as short and sweet and simple as I can, just to talk about a few of the things that I think are important policies to both remind you about things that were in place before, and then also some new policies that we've created. We did redo the handbook as we notified all of you right around this time last year. We were finalizing it, so we just want to make sure that everybody's familiar with what these policies say, and any questions, again, use the chat box or send me a message through email, or give me a call after the webinar's over, and we'll talk about anything that you want to talk about. So we're going to get right into it. The handbook in the past, we have always obviously had sort of an unspoken code of ethics at NIAPers, but we had never really documented it before. So currently, we now have put this into the new handbook, and it's not something I'm going to read you every piece of, but ultimately it's just something that we want everybody to please read through, and really just make sure that you feel like it's a fit for how you're operating every single day. We talk about the principles of trust and credibility, and wanting to make sure that that everybody is being accountable and engaging in their work on a day-to-day basis in a manner that is entirely building trust with both the people that you work with and with your fellow staff members. Respecting the people that you work with, on both sides of the coin, and making sure that everything you do, is considerate of their particular situation. Open and honest communication, whether that between other employees, making sure that you're communicating directly about any issues or concerns that you have, your supervisors, and if you see anything that you don't agree with, or that you feel is adverse to this particular to the way that we do things here, against this code of ethics, speak up about it, and let us address it. Making sure that obviously everything you do, upholds the law and NIAPers policy, avoiding any sort of a conflict of interest in anything that you're doing. So making sure that if you're in the middle of something, on a personal level that you think could in any way jeopardize your work or hurt the agency, making sure that you're not in one of those situations. If you find that you think you might be, letting us know about it so we can sort of address that properly and be in the loop. It talks also about if you receive a gift from someone, or any sort of a business courtesy, somebody might send you something, and not giving those kinds of things in any way that could create a conflict of interest. So take a look at that. It's probably not something we encounter a lot, but it is something that I know occasionally does happen. Making sure that we as an agency are committed to always disclosing any information that we need to disclose, whether it be to the public or to any of the agencies that we're contracted with, making sure that everything is accurate and that is correct, and that our records are being kept accurately and correctly and comprehensively. That we're all accountable every day for what we do, and that we practice substance over form in our day-to-day activities. There are sections on loyalty, confidentiality, use of company resources, and those are all sort of areas we'll get into further, but just making sure you're being responsible with anything that is issued to you, and that you're not misusing it, and then that you're keeping any important confidential any information that is of a confidential nature about NIAPers, about the way we do things, about the people that you work with, keeping that confidential and not allowing any of that information to possibly leak out through the way that you operate and store your devices and things like that. Talks about how to handle media inquiries, which again we're going to get into a little bit further here. and the responsibility that you have to the people that you work with and to the other staff to be a team player and to make sure that you are being upfront and being clear and just you know, trying to maintain good relationships and ultimately doing the right thing. If you're faced with an ethical challenge, making sure that, you know, at the end of the day you feel like whatever you are doing, it's what's going to be in the best interest of you, the agency, and the individuals that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So big nutshell, that's the code of ethics. Again, please read through it. This again is just meant to be a sort of a brief synopsis of some things, and it's not going to give you as much information as if you go through and read these policies. The next policy we're going to talk about is the whistleblower policy. This policy is intended to encourage and enable you to raise any concerns that you have about the agency or something that's going on inside the agency before you feel like you have to go outside the agency. So if there's a problem, we do have an open door policy, so everyone should be comfortable enough to feel like they can share concerns, suggestions, questions, complaints about something that they see that's going on that they feel like is not in the best interest of the agency or that is simply wrong. And absolutely, there's the main point of this is that if that does come up, if there is any sort of a question or an issue that's raised, there's absolutely no, no retaliation. No one will be treated differently for bringing a problem to light. No one will in any way suffer any sort of harassment or, adverse conditions because they brought a problem to light. That's absolutely, just something to be aware of and be. It's the law, and certainly something that we uphold here as well. And this is sort of a policy that we've had, but we've never really formally documented it. So that's just why we're talking about it today. And again, you can do that confidentially, you can do that anonymously, and as long as it's in good faith, the whole purpose is to improve whatever the situation is, and we just want to make sure everybody knows that they're encouraged to bring forward any issues that they might see as a problem. False claims. This is important. I'm bringing this up because we obviously are moving into the situation of Medicaid billing and starting to have to report differently about these, about what we're doing every day, particularly in the peer services division. So I'm just bringing this up so that everyone understands that it is absolutely illegal to either bill or make any sort of false claims or documentation in billing for Medicaid in that situation. So we just want to be absolutely positive that everybody understands that if that were to happen, it could really mean a lot of negative effects for NIAPers. So if you're aware of it, if you know it happened, please bring it to light. Again, open door policy. We want everybody to be direct and upfront. And I'm just bringing this up so that we know that, so everybody's aware that this is a really important policy and something that we have to be extremely careful about when we do our documentation after working with our matches. Confidential information. We talked about this a little bit already with the code of ethics, but ultimately this is just here to say, if you are by nature of being an employee going to be exposed to certain information that is confidential, and we just want to make sure that everyone's familiar, with the need to keep that information under wraps, confidential. Be careful with any device that might have confidential information on it, and just keep things. Don't talk about it in social media, in groups, anything like that. If there's information about whether the people that you're working with or whatnot, just keep that confidential. Media contacts. Anybody that is going to be speaking to the media needs to be authorized in advance by Harvey. We have to make sure that anybody that is speaking to the media, is doing it in, expressing the views of the agency and that it's being put out there and interpreted so that it can be interpreted as accurately as possible. Obviously, you can hold any views that you want to, but if you are going to make any comments, whether it be, even through your own social media page, anything like that, and you're going to identify yourself as a NIAPRS employee, and you have a different position than NIAPRS, you just have to make sure that you're saying, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking on behalf of the agency. And if you're writing anything for publication, you have to run it by Harvey. If it in any way references NIAPRS, even if it just says you work for NIAPRS. So essentially, that's, or if it references your work as a NIAPRS employee. So that's how we would handle it in the event that you needed to in some way communicate with the outside media, or even even the outside world through a social media type of situation. Or interviews or calls or anything like that. HIPAA, obviously we did, most of you did do a training on this a while back, and that training needs to be renewed. But we are a covered entity under HIPAA, and that means that HIPAA is Health Insurance, or I'm sorry, Health Information Protection Act, and it ultimately means that we have got to be very, very careful and not allow any of our protected health information about the individuals we work with to in any way be breached. So it's got to remain strictly confidential. It can't be put on cell phone devices. It's got to remain and we talked about a lot of that in the HIPAA training. But we are currently in the process of writing our more formalized HIPAA policy, and we do have a peer services manual that is going to delineate that more specifically for your actual day-to-day procedures. But it is important to note that we are required to be HIPAA compliant, and as a result, we really have to be extremely careful with any data that we carry or that we have. And again, we're gonna if it pertains to what you do every day, especially obviously the peer services division, you're going to be given some more specific policy and training information around that as we're developing those policies. But just be aware it's something that is new, and that it's new to the handbook rather, and that's something that we're going to be focusing on here in the upcoming months. Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. I apologize, I got the title wrong. Complaints and non-retaliation. Again, this is this is similar to what we've already talked about. But anybody that's experiencing any sort of treatment at work that they feel like is discriminatory, harassing, violent, anything like that, should absolutely report it. And if you even hear another employee talking about it, it's your obligation to report it to your supervisor or to human resources or to anyone that you feel is best, in a managerial role, or again, human resources that is going to, that you're comfortable reporting it to. Obviously, we would conduct an investigation. There would be absolutely no retaliation or any sort of negative or adverse behavior for any claims that were made. And we would certainly try to keep as much of it, as confidential as possible, barring the investigation process. And, the handbook goes through the specific details about, how determinations would be issued, discipline would be issued, and if you wanted to appeal the decision. So again, this is just to make sure that you're aware that you should bring forward any of those types of issues, directly and quickly, and we would absolutely investigate it appropriately, and attempt to resolve it as quickly as possible. Conflict resolution. We want everyone to communicate openly, and that includes with your supervisors. So if you feel that just in the course of your day-to-day, things could be going differently or better. The reason that we have supervision is to help you guys give that feedback and let them, let your supervisors know what it is that you feel like could be going better and how you think we could accomplish that as a group. So whether that's agency-wide or specific to your particular position. So ultimately, that's really this policy is just to encourage you to to bring your concerns directly and talk to your supervisors, and you can, and if you don't feel like it's getting resolved with your supervisor, escalate the problem as needed. And again, all of our policies, they're and NIAPRS is never going to retaliate or in any way negatively impact you for bringing a problem to light. In the event, we're on to accident and injury reporting. In the event that there is any sort of work-related accident that occurs on work property, anything like that, or an illness that results from something work-related, you absolutely have to report it as soon as possible, within a maximum of 24 hours. And no matter how minor it is, we need to know about it. And if it's a minor thing and you choose, hey, look, I'm fine, I stubbed my toe, or I have a cut on my wrist or something like that, please, you still have to report it. You still and you still have to make a written decision if you're going to refuse medical treatment. And we may, depending on the severity of the situation, we may require you, if you do have to be seek medical attention in some way, we may require a doctor's note to let you back onto the property so that we know that you're okay to work. And again, I'm really only this because it's just a policy that we've sort of beefed up a little bit, and I just wanted to bring it to light that because of the nature of our situation where so many people are remote, the majority of our staff is remote, we just want to remind everybody that if anything happens, please let us know about it, since we can't always be right there and see it. We're going to get into this compensation section. There's just a few bits. This policy is much larger than these particular areas, but we wanted to just touch on a few of these particular sections. Pay corrections. In the event that there's something wrong with your check, please bring it up immediately, right away. If a pay rate change is wrong or in some way a problem, you got to let us know, and as soon as possible. And then if there's a discrepancy in some way that is caused by us and we owe you more money, we'll fix it right away in the next check. If there is a problem with money that actually got paid to you that shouldn't have been paid to you, we'll work out a payment plan with you, kind of depending on the amount and what happened and the length of time of the discrepancy. So just so you know that there is policy written around it if there is a problem with anything. Hopefully, knock on wood, we won't have any of those issues. But in the event that something does go wrong, there's documented policy around how that will be handled. Telecommuting, which is what most of you do, because you are obviously not working here in this office. It's important to make sure that you're keeping your workplace and your workspace free from any sort of hazards, and that you're doing your best to comply with occupational safety and health standards. And you making sure that you are only using your agency equipment for the intended purpose, in accordance with safe practices, and only for work purposes, as your job is defined. And those particular devices, that equipment should only be being used by you, not members of your family, friends, things like that. It's entirely issued only for you. And because many of you do work with sensitive data, it becomes even more critical and important to not allow those devices or that equipment to in any way be misused. And obviously, if there is misuse or a problem, and it becomes an issue of repairing or replacing that paper, those pieces of equipment, you may be financially responsible for it, and there may be disciplinary action. So just keep that in mind, as you're going through your day-to-day. Breaks and meal times. I'm bringing this up largely because I want to make sure I just kind of hammer home the point that everybody does need to be taking a lunch. If you're working, and I'll define the conditions under which that happens, but if you're working more than 6 hours in each day, and you're doing that consecutively, you need to take an unpaid 30-minute meal break between 11 and 3 p.m. So, and then you should be taking the break away from your work area. You shouldn't be, eating your lunch while you're, sitting there also making notes, things like that. And this is not a requirement that can be waived. So, if your supervisor says, I really need you today, you just kind of, you absolutely can and should say, I need to take my lunch. I can't work through my lunch. And if that becomes a problem, let me know. But it is definitely a hard and fast policy that you do need to be taking a lunch if you're working more than 6 hours consecutively. And that lunch should be taken between 11 and 3. Make sure, of course, when you're scheduling your lunch that if you do need coverage in some way, that someone is covering your duties. And that also, if you work a shift that begins before 11 in the morning and you continue working past 7 o'clock at night, you also need to take a second meal break between 5 and 7 o'clock. So just be aware of that. Again, you have access to all of these policies, so you may not remember all these specifics from today, but please go and read through it when as needed. Okay, moving on to timesheets. Obviously, we all just went through the timesheet process. We know that timesheets have to be recorded every week, and it's very important for us to have those because it helps us apply for our funding and get the funding as we have recorded or reported that we will use the time. And also, if you're going to work overtime, you absolutely must get this approved in advance by your supervisor. Make sure that if it happens, and overtime doesn't mean necessarily, overtime by definition is anything over 40 hours in a week. However, we work a 37, full-time employees work a 37.5-hour week, part-timers work 20 hours or 15 hours or whatever your allotted hours are. So if you're going to work over your allotted hours, you need to get permission from your supervisor in advance because everyone's job is very highly budgeted. So if we're incurring extra costs on those, in areas we didn't expect, we need to know about it. So make sure you're getting your approvals before you do it because it could create a problem or lead to disciplinary action if you don't. As we talked about, making sure that you're recording everything accurately, keeping good records, putting in your lunch every day, and making sure that you're going through your timesheet approvals. That is part of our policy, and that you do need to begin doing your own timesheet approvals. Any errors that you find or that you have trouble with, like I said earlier, if there's something you just can't fix, and you just bring it to our attention as quickly as possible, and we'll get it straight. And obviously, falsifying any sort of time record, or in some way doing something to create a violation of with your timesheet in some way, obviously is punishable, and could result in disciplinary action up to or including termination. So that's just again, I'm just notifying you of what the policy is and that it does exist. Travel and expense policy. This is something that I think everyone, and I don't think, I know, everyone has to really go through one-on-one and make sure that you're abiding by it. There's a lot in this policy. There's a lot of different sections. There's a lot to go through, and I don't want to drag it out because not everybody travels, but I do think that it's going to be important. Obviously, we reimburse mileage at the authorized rate that we notify everybody, this is going to be our reimbursement rate. You have to submit your expense reports within 15 days of the end of the month. You have to use the most effective costs, or the most effective modes of both transportation and lodging. If for some reason you can't, you have to talk to your supervisor about it. There's specifics about when you should or should not take a rental car, and how much money you have for meal expenses, depending on the length of time you're traveling, that sort of thing. So there's a lot there, and I'm not going to go through all the specifics, but please make sure that if you do travel, that you are reading that policy, because even if you only travel a couple of times a year, even if you're just talking about going to the conference or coming up to the office here to do something, just make sure you're very familiar with the limits and the requirements of that policy. Because it is an important one, and again, all comes back to budget. So we're moving on to performance management. Again, this is a pretty large section. I'm not going to go through all of the different facets of it, but some of the sort of the key things just to point out is that you should be having supervision, and that supervision is entirely there to help foster, more productivity, better relationship with your coworkers and supervisors, and to make you as effective as possible and as happy as possible. So communicate, don't feel, and talk to your supervisor about it. And your supervisor is there to both listen and try to help and try to make things as easy as possible and as effective as possible for you, but also for the agency. So it may not always be what you like, but the whole point is to talk openly about it. Progressive discipline. This is something that we typically do, I would say, here at the agency, but it depends on the nature of the offense. So if there is a problem, and if it's just a minor problem, we're probably going to use a progressive discipline approach. We're going to say, you know what, this has happened a few times. I have to give you a verbal warning about it. Let's try to make sure it doesn't happen again. And if it doesn't happen again, no big deal. If it does, then we move on to, okay, now the next step is possibly a written warning. Then if it happens again, maybe we move to termination. Maybe you get, a final warning, things like that. So that is, in essence, the definition of progressive discipline. And it's something that we may or may not use. However, if we discover that, you've been disseminating some sort of terrible material out using your work email address, and your computer's full of viruses, and you've been maliciously attacking the agency, that may be a situation where we won't use progressive discipline, and the nature of the offense will just require termination. So be aware that depending on what goes on, there may be there's a different there may not be a progressive discipline situation, but most of the time there probably would be. If something occurs in the office and you receive discipline in some way, or you feel like a decision's been made that is not appropriate, and that you really feel like you need a chance to plead your case, you can appeal it. There's a whole section in there about what the appeal process is, and if filing a grievance. So be aware that that's there in the event that for any reason you would need it. Again, we certainly hope not, but if you do, it's there, and you should read through that section. There's a list of things that it's a list of actions that are subject to immediate dismissal, and it's not a comprehensive list, but it's just there to give you some sort of clarity around what types of offenses are so major that they would cause immediate termination. And again, it's not a complete list. It's there if you, for any reason, would find yourself needing to view that, but it definitely is something where you should be familiar with it just in case. Separation of employment, there's some different areas here about just finally sort of formally documenting if you're going to leave the agency. We talk about wanting to do an exit interview, the amount of notice we would need if you were going to retire, if the organization needed to sort of restructure, or we had to reduce staff because we lost funding. There's sections about all of those things. So, important to just take a look at them. Releasing your reference information. And again, this is all under this performance management sort of heading. We talk about what we do in the event that you wanted to use us as a reference. We talk about what we can and can't release. We don't really give professional references as an agency policy. What we do is simply notify you of what your, or we would notify whoever it is that you've given us to as a reference that you did in fact work here. This was your title, your rate of pay, and the length of employment, and that's pretty much all that we would validate. So, if you needed a personal reference or a personal letter of reference, you could talk to someone about that. But again, they're not allowed to speak on behalf of the agency. They're only allowed to speak on your behalf as a personal reference. So just be aware of that, and you can read that policy for further information. There's a whole section on attendance, punctuality, absences, all of that. I'm not going to get into all the details, but it is an important one for you to read through, just to make sure you understand what's expected and what the sort of result could be in the event that there's excessive attendance issues. So please take a look at that. And again, if, what is considered job abandonment, if you just don't show up, repeatedly, the kind of, the parameters around that and what, the actions that we will have to take. So again, read through that, and then the section on performance reviews, where we talk about, you'll have sort of a 3-month sit down, and then you would have a 6-month sort of follow-up meeting to talk about the job description and how you thought things were going, and then you would begin having annual reviews thereafter. So just be aware that that's there. It very clearly defines what the process and procedure is. So that's sort of performance management. Inclement weather, and I bring this up only because I think it's come up a couple of times, and it can get a little confusing when nobody really knows, what's going on in different areas, because we all work all over the state. So if there's any sort of reason that things are, possibly causing a closure of the office, or a delay, something like that, it's going to be determined regionally. So if it's snowing, in Rochester and Buffalo, and it's bright and sunny here in Albany, what's going to happen in Rochester and Buffalo for those, for Len and for employees that are sort of headed out that way may be different than what happens here. If it's coming down in buckets here in Albany, then it may be that this office has to take a delay or a closing, but let's say Edie and the staff in the city are unaffected. So it's going to be determined regionally, and you will be notified by your supervisor or through a telephone tree, however your individual division has it set up, to basically let you know, okay, you need to work today, or we're calling it done, we're closed today, whatever it's going to be. But then there's also still an expectation that you're going to still, try to do the best you can to fulfill your job duties, even though you may not be reporting to work or be able to travel to, wherever it was that you were going to go that day. So making sure that you're still, checking your phone, answering emails, things like that. So to the best of your ability, plan ahead for that if you know there's a huge storm coming, something like that. But you can read through this policy a little bit more and just identify, just in the event how you'll be notified. But ultimately, you should be notified by 8 a.m. By your supervisor of what the plan is for the day, in the event of a weather condition or some sort of other emergency state. Okay, paid leave policies. If you've been sleeping, wake up, because this is the part where I would like to make sure that everybody, all of this is very important. I just want to make sure that everybody understands this, because this is a very new thing, and I think some people may not even be aware of some of the benefits that they're now entitled to. So we're going to go through this one thing at a time here. So we're going to first talk about sick leave. Nothing has changed for full-time employees. Sick time is granted the same way that it was, and it's for the purposes of attending to your own illness, injury, medical needs, or attending to the medical needs of an immediate family member, a parent-in-law, a grandparent, spouse, domestic partner, child, your sibling. You will, as a full-time employee, earn a day a month, 7.5 hours, up to 12 days in a year. It accrues, as you know, month over month. Part-time employees, however, didn't all used to get sick time. So if you are a part-time employee, be aware you now are earning sick time, and you're getting that on a prorated basis. So if, like, for example, and again, this is something where specifically go through the policy, because I do delineate kind of charts and things about how much each particular class, I guess number of hours class is getting for each vacation sick, all of that. But in this case, it's always a clear prorate. So a 37.5-hour person gets 12 days in a year. A 15-hour person gets an exact prorate of that, and it ends up being 36 hours a year. So it's essentially one day a month for you as well, and a day being 3 hours. So that's how sick time is working now, and you'll see that it's accruing in your Paychex system. So you now have sick time to use. You part-timers, I mean, that you may or may not have known that you had. So please ask me any questions about that, but it is an important thing to note that this is a new policy, and we are now giving sick time to part-time employees. And again, it's accrued, monthly and the first payroll of the month. And new employees, you start accruing it again, first payroll of the month after you start. You can't use it for the first 90 days of your employment. So if you are a new employee, you still have to make it through that 90-day introductory period, but you are actually earning time. There's also limits as far as how much can be carried over, so be aware of that. You can full-time employees can carry over 60 days, which equates to 450 hours. 15-hour employees can carry over 180 hours. 20-hour-a-week employees can carry over 240 hours, so on and so forth. So essentially, those limits are all documented in the policy. You can go through it and look, but just be aware that sick time is a benefit that will, like, if you're over that maximum carryover, you're going to lose time when the year rolls over. That's not an encouragement to use any sort of sick time for if you're not sick, because you certainly earn plenty of it. And again, it's not a benefit that you're not going to get paid out for it. When you separate from the agency, it's just there strictly in the event that you truly are ill or you need to care for an ill family member. So that's the sick policy largely. And in the event, though, that you are ill, we can, as the agency, request some sort of documentation from your medical service providers stating that you were ill. And obviously, any misuse of sick time is a disciplinary offense. And you can't use sick time to extend any sort of vacation or holiday. And again, like I said, you're not going to be paid out for it at the end of your employment. It's not calculated toward overtime pay. And also, an important thing to note, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, you don't actually earn sick time or any other sort of time off if you are on unpaid leave of absence. So that all those accruals pause if you have to go on unpaid leave. Personal time, this is a benefit that's only given to regular full-time employees, and you earn 22.5 hours, which is 3 days a year. And you get it the first day of hire, and then also every January 1st thereafter. And you can, of course, it has to be approved. You have to ask your supervisor for it. Obviously, there are emergency situations, of course, but if you know you need it, please try to request it in advance. And this is, again, it's not something you're going to be paid out for upon separation, and it does not accrue. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Vacation time. Again, vacation is available to all regular employees. So part-time, full-time, you are all earning vacation as you were before. But it has changed a little bit. For part-timers, again, it's now it's a straight calculation based off of the full-time amount. So if you, again, I detail it out here in the policy, but full-timers get between 0 and 3 years of service. You accrue it month over month, but you're accruing 1.25 days a month, up to 15 in a year. If you have been working with the agency more than 3 years, you get 20 days off. Accrued, of course, so you don't have it all in a lump sum. You get it month over month over month, but it ends up being in a full calendar 12-month period, 20 days. And again, there's more, the detail is kind of broken down here in the policy, so I would encourage you to look at it. Part-time, again, it's going to be sort of that allotment based on the full-time hours. So again, take a look at it. You know, it's all broken down in the policy, the number of days that you get, because it starts to get a little bit it's just a little bit detailed once you get into all the different, you know, part-time allocations. So 15 hours get a different amount, of course, but take a look at the policy because it is all broken down, and you can see what you are earning. So essentially, part-time employees are now getting more vacation time than they were before because it's simply an allocation of the full-time amount based on the number of hours you work each week. And of course, that also goes up once you are through that 0 to 3 year window. Once you've worked more than 3 years, you earn more. So it's exactly the same policy. It's just allocated. Regular employees also carry over a maximum. Everyone can carry over a maximum of 10 days of vacation. Now, a day, you know, is the average number of hours you work per day in a 5-day work week. So a 15-hour person would work 3 hours, you know, averaged per day. So you can carry over a max of 30 hours of vacation time. A full-time person is going to be working, you know, 7.5-hour days. So they're going to be able to carry over 75 hours, totaling 10 days. So be aware of that. That again, if you are, you know, keep an eye on your vacation balances because you want to make sure that you're not, you know, in a situation where you're going to carry over more than that 10 days, or you will lose your time. And again, you know, certainly while we appreciate that everyone wants to work and you know, is sometimes doesn't use a lot of their vacation, we do want you to make sure that you're taking time to rest and do what you need to do for yourself. So don't, you know, vacation is there truly as a benefit that we want you to, you know, at least from time to time, take advantage of. Again, you won't accrue vacation on unpaid leave. You should try to submit at least a week in advance for that vacation time. Ideally, you should submit earlier than that if you know that you're going to be out, and most of the time, hopefully, you will. Of course, it's all there in Paychex. You can see that at any point. And this is time that you would be paid for if you separate from the agency. So any bank of time that you had, you would be paid for when you left the agency that was unused. And obviously, if there is you know, a severe need and you're not, you know, you want to take time off when maybe, you know, several other people have already had time off approved, something like that, the agency, your supervisor may tell you, I'm sorry, I can't give you that time off. There's already too many other people out, or we really are going to be in the middle of a crunch then, or we have an event going on, whatever it may be. You know, but if that happens, certainly, you know, we would try to give you as much notice as possible. We won't reimburse if you say, well, you know, I gave you a week's notice, but, you know, you declined it, and I already have, you know, tickets booked to whatever you know, we can't reimburse you for that. So try to make sure you're getting in those notices as soon as possible. You can't take time off, you know, like as unpaid if you don't have vacation hours, and if you for any reason find yourself in a bind and you need time off for something that, you know, and you don't have the time, talk to your supervisor about it, and we'll go from there. But yeah, that's kind of the vacation policy. Again, I encourage everybody to read it thoroughly because it does, you know, have more detail than what I'm giving you here today. The holiday policy, we have 13 holidays in a year and 1 floating holiday. The floating holiday can't be used until April 1st of the calendar year. You do have to put a request in the system for the floating holiday. That's one of the things in that drop-down box if you do want to take the time off. And holidays are actually also now, all holidays are being given to all employees, all regular employees. So that means part-timers are getting all the holidays as well in that same sort of prorated model. So, you know, if you are a 15-hour employee, 1 day a week for you is 3 hours, so you're going to get paid 3 hours for every holiday, 4 hours for a 20-hour person, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it hasn't changed for full-time employees. If there's a holiday that falls on a Saturday, we're going to observe it the Friday before. If there's one that falls on a Sunday, we're going to observe it the Monday after. And then if you have any questions about religious holidays, please look at this policy in the handbook. Bereavement leave is something that has come up several times. I've had a lot of questions about this, so I would encourage you to please read through the bereavement leave policy in the handbook, and it basically defines who you can take time off for in terms of the relationship with them, the amount of time you're allowed. It's different for part-time and full-time people. All of that is detailed. I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but please be aware that that's there, and that will tell you exactly what scenarios you can take and use bereavement leave in. Of course, the bereavement leave is intended to go to the funeral, or the service of some sort. So if you are going to use it, be aware that you do in fact have to attend the services. Again, bereavement leave is not something. It's something that if you need it, it's there for you, but it's not anything that's going to accrue or that you can you're going to be paid out for. That's going to in some way be used as, you can't use it as personal time, anything like that. That is the paid leave policies and the bereavement leave policy. Now I want to talk a little bit about unpaid leave, because this is something that comes up often enough. We do grant unpaid leaves of absence in certain unavoidable, unusual circumstances. And in order to take one, you have to use up all your paid leave time before you can move into unpaid leave. You should try to submit your request as soon as possible once you know, and ideally 30 days in advance, but if that doesn't work, then as soon as possible. As long as it's allowed and there's no issue with it, which we haven't seen so far, we will continue to pay your insurance premiums for 3 months while you're on unpaid leave. This is so that way, unpaid leaves are often for medical reasons or health reasons, and obviously we don't want to cut your insurance out from underneath you, when you're not working and you're trying to get better. So for 3 months on an unpaid leave, you would have insurance benefits. If it went beyond that, we would need to have a conversation about just what the agency can do and whether we could accommodate anything further, or to make arrangements so that you can pay for your own health insurance coverage. And again, paid leave benefits are not going to accrue while you're on unpaid leave. Also, just something to note, if you do go out on unpaid leave, if you come back the way that you intended and everything is on schedule, your job will be waiting for you. In the event that you need to go longer than was originally anticipated, we hope and we'll do everything in our power to make sure that your job is waiting for you. But if the need arises and we can't afford to continue to have an absence or a vacancy in a role, we will try to give you a position that is as close to that role as absolutely as can be. And in the event that we've had to fill the role and there's no other option because you have extended your leave past what was feasible for NIAPers, we would certainly be as communicative about that as possible, but we cannot, as a bottom line, we ultimately can't guarantee that we will have a position for you. Granted, we have always, I think historically, done everything in our power to make sure that we do bring you back in the closest thing possible to what you left in. So I want you to be aware of that. I don't think that it's certainly something that we would try to avoid at all costs, but it is what is the policy. So, and we would certainly encourage reapplication if that did in fact happen. Again, we talked about the health coverage. Of course, that's going to be maintained if you're on a paid leave of absence, where you're using your sick and vacation time. But once it's unpaid, of course, we said it'll go through 3 months. Deductions are going to continue to be withheld. If you're on a paid leave, all of your accruals and your holiday time will continue. If you're on unpaid leave, they would not. If you, again, if you needed to cover any part of health insurance premiums while you were out on a leave of absence, like if you were covering a dependent, you would need to work that out with us in advance. There's also some other leave types that we offer, and I don't want to get into all of them, but just so you're aware, we do offer jury duty leave, victim and witness leave in case you need to testify in a situation where you have been the victim or a witness to a crime. And then there's also blood and bone marrow donation leave. So please take a look at all those. I'm not going to get into them today, but I just want to make sure that you're aware that they do exist. I'm bringing up time off to vote only because the election is upon us. And take a look at that policy. Essentially, if you don't have enough time to vote outside of your regular work hours, now a lot of us have flexible work hours, so maybe this may or may not really apply to you. But ultimately, if you're not allowed enough hours, you can take off up to 2 hours at the beginning or the end of your day with pay to allow time to vote. And time to vote, you know, means a maximum of 4 hours, but ultimately it's only 2 hours of paid time. And you should let your supervisor know about this in advance, at least 10 days, or try to make it 10 days in advance if possible, but it has to be within 48 hours. So if you plan to, if you know you can't get to the polls for some reason in your area outside of work time, notify your supervisor that you're probably going to need a little bit of time off to vote. And make sure you're doing it at least 48 hours, if not longer, in advance. We're getting short on time, so I don't want to belabor benefits, but we all know that there's, you know, medical, dental, vision that we provide. We also have the flexible spending account. I just want to touch on the fact that these benefits are something that, you know, can be changed at any time. Currently, we don't require an employee contribution. Historically, we haven't, but that doesn't mean that that will be the case forever. So just be aware of that. And obviously, as you know, the benefits do change from year to year in terms of the offerings of the plans. Full-time employees are eligible for health benefits. Part-time employees are not. However, part-time employees may be allowed to elect benefits at their own cost if they should choose to, depending on the requirements of the plan each year. And we will keep you abreast of that as the changes happen. Again, like I said, your contributions could be subject to change depending on what the agency's budget is for the year. And if you want to elect benefits, it's your responsibility to make sure that you do that by the deadline. You can't join after open enrollment unless you are a new employee, so just make sure that, you know, you're getting all of that stuff taken care of when it's presented to you. Your coverage ends on the last day of the month in which you are, which you leave the agency. And if you have any questions or anything, please let me know at any point. Let's see. If you have a qualifying event, certainly that is a reason that you could elect health insurance outside of the open enrollment or outside of new employment. That may be anything, you know, birth of a child, change in your marriage status, things like that. So there's many different options that could present themselves to give you that opportunity, like you lost coverage elsewhere, etc. If you lose your coverage for any reason, usually because of a termination from our agency, then you would have the option of COBRA. COBRA would come from a third party, and essentially they would send you an application. You would have to get it filled out and returned. And then also pay that premium for the coverage so you could continue with the agency's health coverage, but it doesn't go through the agency at this point. You obviously, it's very important to get those premiums in on time, because if you don't send them the payments, they will terminate you, and then you don't have an option to come back onto it. So just be aware, and you can only elect COBRA for the plans that you are enrolled in when you leave the agency. So if you're not enrolled in anything when you leave the agency, you're not going to have COBRA options. So just be aware of that. Our 403B plan, we have talked about this a little bit already, but the main point of what I wanted to talk about here, and again, please read through that other document, was that we do not allow loans or hardship distributions in this plan, and that's something that has come up a couple of times recently. So, you know, if you just are finding yourself in need of some extra cash, this is not a place where you're going to be able to get it. You can take what they call an in-service distribution, which is money from the plan while you're still employed, but only if you have reached their criteria, one of them being age 59 and a half. So just be aware that that is sort of the conditions of this particular plan, but please ask me if you have any questions before you call. We've had a couple of people call Voya directly and get some misinformation from Voya, which we're working with Voya to correct, but ultimately give me a call first if you have questions about the 403B, because we don't want to, I don't want you to end up going down the wrong path, if you are looking to do something with that. Obviously, you can make your voluntary contributions at any point. You can change them at any point. And then once you become eligible, the company does put in a non-elective contribution for you. It's like after a year of employment, you have to work a certain number of hours, but most staff is within that number of hours because we just lowered it last year. Ultimately, the main key thing is that you set up an account, because if you haven't set your account up, we'd make a deposit to Voya, and Voya says there's no place to put this money, so then they kick it back to us. So the important part of a lot of what the issues are that we run into with this plan is that we don't have accounts set up. So if you are going to make a contribution, you just have to, once you let me know that, we'll get you into the process of getting your account set up. But it is a key important factor. I know many of you have had to go through that sort of after the fact. So just make sure that we're, if that happens, be responsive. Speak to our financial advisor. And let's see. And again, the whole point of this plan is to make sure that people can put money away pre-tax to be able to have for their retirement. So that's why we don't allow these distributions, is because we want everyone to when they retire, we want this to be there for them. And that document talks about, those conditions and taxing and all of that. So please take a look at that and ask me any questions that you have. Let's see. Disability has come up quite often. Be aware if you need to file for disability for any reason. If you're going to be on a leave of absence, please contact me. I'll get you the form. Disability is something that we cover by law, and it's a benefit to everybody for any sort of non-work related injury or illness. We don't make the determination as to whether you get it. The carrier does, the insurance carrier. But it's available. The payments are taxable income. You can get it up to a maximum of 26 weeks. But the benefit is only a max of $170 a week, so it's not, and that's a maximum. So it's not a lot of money, but it's definitely there, and it's available to you in the event that you have a situation where you are out of work and disabled for some sort of non-work related injury. If it's work related, that would be workers' compensation, and there's a whole section in the plan about, or in the handbook about that. The Employee Assistance Program, the EAP, you all know it's there. I'm putting this in here because I just want to encourage everyone to use it. We don't see a lot of usage on this plan. It's there to help you with any personal or family matters. It's no cost. It's confidential. Work-life balance tools, financial services, legal services, counseling services, it's all there. Please call them. And there's contact information in the handbook, and you all have that contact information also. When you started, I gave you pamphlets and stuff, but if for any reason you need it, please contact me. I'm happy to issue that information again to you. Just a reminder that it's there, because it's definitely a very valuable program. It is something that we do pay for, and we want everybody to be able to use it because it's got a lot of great benefits. We're going to talk now about agency property. Please make sure that ultimately these policies are here to essentially remind you that you have to use this equipment appropriately, that it can't be used by other people, that it needs to be for only company purchases, or I'm sorry, company practices, the things that you're doing every day in your job. It's there for business use. You shouldn't be downloading anything at all. You should only be doing anything systematically or technologically in terms of updates, repairs, etc., that you're being instructed to do by Riveris. Cell phones, they're not for your music. They're not for your pictures. They're there entirely for agency purposes. They can't be used for any sort of confidential information, so don't put that information on there. If you are going to be traveling with your equipment, make sure it's secure. Don't leave it in a parked car sitting on the seat. All of those types of things are what this policy is about. Make sure that you're using, the internet appropriately, only for work things. Not looking at things that are going to put malware or viruses on your computer. Make sure that you're using the email system only for work. It shouldn't be for sending personal emails. It shouldn't be for sending out any sort of, political views, anything like that. It's entirely for the purposes in which it's intended, which is your work duties. Same thing goes. Make sure that you're holding on to your ID cards, your credit cards, anything, your keys, things like that. Don't let those things be lost. Secure them if they're going to be, if you're traveling with them, anything like that. And be aware that anything that you do on your company equipment is not it's not private. There's no privacy rights to it. If it's NIAPR's company equipment and agency equipment, we have the right to see it and to look at it and to do anything that we choose to, with that information. So don't expect privacy. And then also, if there is any sort of apparent information that's there that shouldn't be, and it's obvious that you haven't been following policy, and it can be a disciplinary issue. So please just be aware of that and really take very good care of your equipment, keep it safe, and only use it for the intended purpose. Also, it has to be returned, obviously, if we request it back or when you leave the agency. So make sure that you do return it. If you don't, we may require you to pay for it, but also we're going to have to get it back. So because it's the nature of the data on there could be sensitive, and we are required by HIPAA to do that, but if you're working in a program that has got that kind of sensitive data. Obviously, no stolen software, nothing like that. And if we find that you just repeatedly are damaging your equipment, if we constantly have to replace your cell phone, or we constantly have to replace, your laptop, something like that, because there's just constant damage, it may get to the point where we're going to seek reimbursement from you to cover some of that repair or that replacement cost. So please be careful. Same thing goes for any loss of property. If you lose it, we may have to, we need to know immediately. It could be a breach of HIPAA. Depending on what might be on your machine. If you may be required to reimburse us for it if you just decided to go to the beach and you took your tablet because you wanted to watch a movie while you were there, and there's no, obviously that wasn't work related. So be cautious and be careful with all of your agency property, and that includes rental cars, things like that, and not don't. If you're driving on behalf of the company, parking tickets, anything like that, just be aware that all of that is sort of part of the equation, and that we're not going to reimburse you for any of that, but obviously, especially if you're driving in a rental vehicle or a NIAPR's vehicle, you need to be careful, because all of that is going to become a problem if it's a repeated issue. Personal property. Try very hard not to have a lot of, don't bring your personal property to work if you can avoid it, or don't have a lot of personal property when you're out traveling for work. If you do, if you're carrying, for ladies, a purse, your wallet, whatever, your laptop bag, any of that stuff, if you're, I don't know, maybe you're tucking things in there that are yours personally, just be very cautious with it and make sure that you're securing it, so that, because we can't be responsible if you do have a loss of personal property while you're on work time. A couple of other policies to review. Not going to get into them, but if you drive on behalf of the company, please review policy 43I regarding vehicles and parking. If you have a company credit card, it's very important. Make sure you review policy 43K regarding credit card use. There's a lot there, and I think it's definitely something where you're going to be expected to abide by those if you are doing either of those two things. So just keep an eye on it, and make sure you go through those. We've talked about cell phones. I'm not going to get into it too much. Ultimately, use it for what it's intended for. Personal use is prohibited, except for an occasional call that you may need to make, but it's definitely not something that we want you to be doing. And same thing with text messages. It should all be agency related. If we find that you're doing using your cell phone, your company cell phone, or any company equipment excessively, that for personal use, you know, that could be subject to disciplinary action. We may have to take your phone back. You might be responsible for any extra charges we incur, because we do have, there are, you know, our cell phone plan is an unlimited plan, but there is a limit. I mean, they call it an unlimited plan, but across all of the phones, we do have a group limit, and we have hit that limit from time to time because of people using their phones for personal use, and it does incur extra charges, which are kind of hefty. So please just be cautious of that. And while occasional personal use is you know, understandable for emergencies and things like that, please make sure that you're not personally using your cell phone beyond the occasional, you know, call. And make sure, you know, if you do need to have a personal call while you're at work, do it. Try to do it during non-work times, your lunch or break, what have you. But again, like we said, we may, you know, we can ban or limit your use if we need to. You should not be taking pictures or using recording functions in any way unless it's part of your job. And I don't know that it is part of anyone's job currently. And again, you know, definitely nothing confidential should ever be going on your cell phone, in a text message, on a voicemail, any of that. It should not be there. Again, don't break it. If you do, you know, wear and tear is normal, but if we find that we're constantly having to replace it, you might be charged for the cost of it. Same kind of thing. No driving. Like if you're using, if you're driving on behalf of the agency, do not use your cell phone. Unless it's an absolute emergency and you have a hands-free device. Otherwise, you should not be driving and talking at the same time. It's a distraction. So please make sure that if you do need to use your cell phone while you're traveling, that you pull over. And we definitely, you know, if you're getting tickets or anything like that because of that sort of thing while you're on the road, that could be a subject to disciplinary action if you're doing it on company time. Again, we talked about text messages, so just be aware of that. And again, if you have to report a sick day or anything else to your supervisor, don't do it through a text message. Call them. Social media, certainly it's not something to engage in while you're at work, and it's something that you need to do on your own time using your own equipment and facilities. And, you know, while you are on social media, you know, don't be disrespectful toward the agency, the leadership, the vendors, participants, you know, employees, customers, any of that. Don't, you know, and if you are going to express views on that, you know, you can't reference the agency. And if you are going to in some way reference the agency, you have to, like we said before, state that you're not expressing, these are your views and not the views of your employer. So read through that policy and just make sure that you're familiar with it, so that if you are using social media and you're, you know, that you're abiding by these rules, so that you're not getting yourself into a situation where it could leak over into the workplace. Same thing, no use of agency trademarks or anything like that. Social media is intended for you personally, and it really shouldn't reference the agency. We talked about email only for the use of, you know, only for work purposes. You have no privacy, so if you're using your company email address for anything, the agency has the right and the ability to see anything within there. You know, anything personal that goes through there needs to be approved by your supervisor. And of course, nothing, you know, nothing that would in any way be offensive or be sort of religious or political, you know, emails relating to, you know, selling anything, stuff like that. All of that is stuff that's not allowed on company email. We talked a little bit about downloading. Don't, you know, anything that you should not be downloading anything to your machine unless it's in the course of your work that is allowable. Nothing, you shouldn't be streaming videos, you shouldn't be streaming movies, anything like that. be careful not to open strange attachments or strange emails to avoid viruses. You know, you shouldn't be sending, you know, I don't know, music, junk email forwarding, you know, any of that. It's not related. It's not related to your work, and you can't be doing it. And then that also applies to your cell phone. So you should not be having pictures, you know, music, that kind of stuff on your cell phone, because it takes up your data and it takes up storage, and then you can't do what you need to with your phone. We talked about internet usage. I'm not going to go through it again. Obviously, nothing violent, offensive, discriminatory, pornographic. All of that is not acceptable, and certainly, if we see that, you know, it's going to be subject to disciplinary action. Again, no downloading. Don't do anything with your software, you know, or your system without talking to Riveris. If you get a strange pop-up, whatever it may be, call Riveris. Don't hit yes, download, or don't say yes, I want to do updates. That should all be happening in the background. So if you're getting things, don't assume that it's okay. Just call. And obviously, you know, you can get permission from your supervisor if for some reason during your non-work time you do need to do something. You know, if you need to access personal email or something like that, your supervisor may allow you to do that, but you need to get permission first. And let's see. Again, we've talked about the security of data on your machines. You know, you shouldn't be ever removing anything from your machine. Do not remove software. Do not remove information or data. You know, NIAPers will dispose of anything that they need to dispose of as they're supposed to. So don't, you know, that's not, again, something that is responsibility for you, and it's also something that is against our policy. So don't take anything off your computer. Because, you know, we pay for those software licenses, that sort of thing. And it's all, you know, it's all there for a reason, and also around HIPAA, there's requirements to clean and delete and destroy information, data, and even software or hardware that, you know, may have confidential information. So that's just, don't delete stuff off your computer. And then the last thing is safety procedures. Use good judgment. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you know, don't do, you know, don't lift things that are, you know, too heavy for you, and don't do any sort of, you know, don't leave cords lying around in your home office or here in this office where you're going to trip over them. Just be cautious and careful that you are maintaining safe work conditions for yourself. If you see an unsafe work condition, if you have a problem and you can't avoid it and you're not sure what to do about it, please call me or let me know about it if you're here in the office. You know, if anything does happen, if you see that there's, you know, some sort of a safety hazard and you don't report it, that could be a problem for you. So please make sure that it's something that you're cautious of and aware of. And remain safe, the same thing. If you're traveling, if you're driving, if you're working with people, be aware of your surroundings. Make sure that everything that you're aware of what's going on, and that, you know, you're making the safest decisions and trying to maintain the safest practices that you can while you're in those situations. There is a list of general rules, some things, you know, that you can kind of do just as day-to-day practices to kind of keep you safe, making sure you're closing, you know, drawers and doors and files, and asking for help when you need it, avoiding, you know, overloaded outlets, letting people know if someone has been injured, that sort of thing, keeping your area clean, just things like that. So take a look at that list in the safety manual, or I'm sorry, the handbook in the safety policy, which is toward the end. Again, please review the handbook. This is the disclaimer, so this is another very critical thing. Just because we did this today doesn't mean that you don't have to read the handbook or become familiar with the policies. You have to sign off, and you've all signed off on something stating that you would, and that you are going to look at the handbook, and that you're going to be committed to knowing those policies and abiding by them, and you're responsible for that. So please make sure that you understand that we just did a quick, it wasn't quick, I'm sorry for that, but, you know, a synopsis of what these policies are, but this isn't all the policies by any means. So please make sure you're reviewing the handbook because that is your obligation to do that. Any questions? If you want to, again, send them through chat and we can talk about them as a group, or email me or call me and let me know what you need. But I'm happy to answer any questions. We can go through anything again. Timesheets, you know, the Human Resources portal, accessing it, anything like that, please talk to me and let me know what you need. I hope everyone has a good day. Thank you for hanging with me here. I know this has been a long one, but keep me posted if you need anything or if you have any issues or if you want to talk about anything. Thank you all, and I'll hang out and wait just for any chats that come through that we can go through. So thanks again. Have a good day.